I'm Gale Brewer, Manhattan Borough President, and I am truly honored to be introducing the show Represent NYC on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And today, perhaps my most favorite topic. We're going to talk about how young people, teens in particular, can make a huge impact on the government when they join their local community board. And we have three very special guests, actually four very special guests, I'm sorry. One is a former teen community board member. I remember, Leila, when you joined community board number 3, and then 3 who are current members. Community boards, as you know, as members are the most grassroots, I would say, input in terms of civic society in our city. I don't know if other cities have community boards, but we certainly have the most active ones. We know that at the community board level, you monitor the delivery of city services, sanitation, street maintenance, schools, playgrounds, parks, land use, even things like sidewalk cafes during this awful pandemic, and certainly everything to do with open space. Liquor authority. You can't drink, but you can decide whether or not a bar gets a liquor license. I love that. Obviously, some of you have participated in massive zoning changes, and you make a recommendation on what the city should pass in terms of next year's budget. And we know there are 59 community boards on the whole city, 51 members on every community board. And in Manhattan, we have 12 in Manhattan. Now, the way it works for the Borough of Manhattan, and I think in the other boroughs, is that every year we do outreach. We outreach to young people, we outreach to parents, we outreach to business people, we outreach to labor, architects. We try to make sure that the community board is representative of the area in terms of the demographics. And we also make sure that we remind people that it was the state senate and the city council that made sure that 16 and 17-year-olds could be on a community board. And you might want to know that it happened because I, as a council member, tried to get the colleagues to vote for a bill that said young people, 16 and 17-year-olds, can vote in city elections. Well, nobody was interested in that. So my compromise was that you all could be on a community board, 16 and 17-year-olds. I was pretty upset. I think John Liu supported me. Rosie Mendez might have supported me because we were colleagues in the city council. But I remember the then chair, may he rest in peace, Lou Fiddler, said he had 2 sons. They're both in law school. And he said, no, when they were 16-year-olds, they couldn't make a decision. So I am not going to support 16-year-olds voting. I was so upset. So that was the end of my bill. But thankfully, you got to be on a community board as a result. So I know that we have some phenomenal teens who are with us today. Betty Kubovy-Weiss is 17 years old and serves on Community Board 2, and that covers west of Broadway, north of Canal, south of Houston, basically Greenwich Village. And western part of Soho, Betty attends Hunter College High School, as I said earlier, lots of drama. Jada Heredia, who is 20 years old and serves on Community Board 11, which covers East Harlem primarily, and also includes Randall's Island and Ward's Island. And she's at Fordham University and second term on Community Board number 11. Paradise Phoenix is 18 years old and she serves on Community Board number 12, which includes Washington Heights and Inwood in Upper Manhattan, as we all know. And she attends Beacon High School, and she's a former volunteer at the fabulous Word Up bookstore, which as Paradise knows and I know, we all love, and is also the home of where we do testing every Tuesday. And Madam Eliot, who was the first teen member I appointed at Manhattan Community Board. She was on Community Board 3, 2014 to 2016. I think Rosie Mendez has known her since she's born, I believe. And you are a graduate of the University of Albany and you're applying to law school. So congratulations to everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Rosie Mendez now. But you should know that the fact that you're here, that you understand how important community boards are. And I have to say, when we first started, the adults would say, oh, I don't think 16 or 17-year-olds can make a decision. They don't know anything. Now they are saying, oh, praising how great it is to have a young person on the board. So thank you for setting such great, such the bar so high, because you do. Rosie Mendez, all yours.
Every year, we appoint or reappoint 300 members for a total of 600 are the members for all 12 community boards. Currently, we have 6 boards that have youth members and 6 boards that do not. And on boards 1 and 11, we have 2 19-year-olds who will be turning 20. And so then they won't be considered youth under the city laws. And in both those cases, so Jada's been on for 3 years, rave reviews. Everyone just talks about how thoughtful you are, how they can't lose you. And on board 1, we have a young man, Devin Chu, who is also attending college in the community. And he became a co-chair or vice chair of a committee and has been there for 4 years. And you both soon will be considered adult members. I recall when I recommended to you, Madam Borough President, Leila, who was interning in my office, to appoint her. I thought it would be a great start because for better or worse, Leila was the 50 and a half members of Community Board 3 because her dad was a member and used to take her to meetings all the time. And so we always just joke around that there were 50 and a half members. So I knew that she knew community boards, the good and the bad, and that she would really go in, and make a difference. And, people there just said how wonderful it was to have you there. Betty, we met, and recently you were moderating a big town hall meeting for Community Board 2. Everyone talked about how you did it so expertly. And Paradise, I've been to a couple of CB12 meetings, so this is my first time actually communicating with you, and I'm looking forward to having you reapply and stay on, and I hope that you're enjoying the work. We are trying to get at least one youth on every board, but what happens oftentimes is like what happened with Leila is she got to that point where she left to go to college. And, so that happens. We have the benefit with Jada and with Devin that they are still attending school in New York and are able to participate in meetings. The open meetings law, you're supposed to be in meetings, but now during this pandemic, you can join virtually. I think that makes it easier for a lot of people, particularly some of the youth who would have some issues when they were commuting late at night, because sometimes community board meetings could go to really late. So we're still working on trying to get a youth on every board. And I just want to point out that everyone who showed up today are women. So thank you. We got a lot of girl power going on, Gale.
Yes.
And if there's anything else, we're in the middle of applications right now. We just extended the deadline because in some community boards, we have more vacancies than others. So we extended the deadline from February 1st. It is now February 22nd. So everyone can still apply. The application is online. It's available by clicking on Gale's website. And maybe I can read the bit.ly address later to have it on the record.
Okay. All right. So I want to also mention that I think on board 7, the person, young man, is also managed to be either the secretary or the assistant secretary. And to be honest with you, he is actually more prepared than most of the adults. I'll just say it like that. And I think the adults have come to realize that quite extensively. And of course, during COVID, Zoom began. And of course, who knew how to run the Zoom, work the Zoom, discuss the Zoom, get the older adults onto Zoom? Let's be clear. Thank goodness for the 16 and 17-year-olds. I wanted to just say that. So Betty, why don't you just talk about what you've enjoyed on the community board, what you've done on the community boards, and, you know, what it's like, and, you know, sort of what the challenges are, but also what the positive aspects. And it's been a very different experience with COVID, I'm sure. So go ahead.
Yeah, sure. As Rosie mentioned, a big thing that I've been really excited about being able to do on the community board has been hosting a few panels for the Schools and Education Committee. We did one on the difficulties with remote learning, and then we did one more recently where we had representatives from almost all of the high schools in our district for those students to talk about their experiences, because a lot of the tours and information sessions are canceled due to COVID. So that's been really great to be able to help out the middle schoolers in the community and also give the adults a better sense of what it's really like to be in remote learning in school. Yeah, I mean, certainly COVID has meant that we've been on Zoom, which in some ways has been helpful for me. I'm able to, you know, be at home and not have to handle the commute. It's been easier to handle all of my scheduling. But the meetings have been running a little longer than what I've heard they used to when we were in person, which is definitely a consideration. But you know, usually they're not too bad. The full board meetings are the ones that usually go pretty long. But I think that's pretty typical. What I really have loved about being on the community board is that I love my neighborhood. I live in Greenwich Village, but it was always sort of a thing. The things that I loved about it were the things that I knew about, and the things that I knew about were limited and sort of random. And being on the community board has given me a lot of exposure to the really exciting and interesting things and people that are in my district that I might not have known about before. And then also, as someone who's really passionate about my neighborhood, being able to support projects that I'm passionate about, advocate for funding for schools, advocate for parks to be opened and to receive funding and licenses, all of those things have made me feel like a real member of the community, and have made me feel like I'm actually taking an active role in improving my community as well. So it's been a really rewarding experience, and I'm very happy to represent the community board too.
Congratulations. Jada, you're in board 11. I love East Harlem. Tell me what committees you're on or what you've enjoyed, sort of similar to what Betty was talking about. Anything you want.
Sure, yeah. I do serve on Community Board 11 in East Harlem, which is where I was born and raised, which is pretty cool. And my experience has been very similar to Betty's, actually, which makes me think that this is kind of a universal community board experience, which is really cool. That's like a uniting factor. It's nice. But yeah, definitely one of the most interesting and personally rewarding things is being able to see my community in a new light, because while sitting on the community board, I do see we get a lot of presentations from a lot of people who are people and organizations who are starting new projects and who are looking for support from the community board. And it's a really great way to kind of see not only the resources and really cool gems that already do exist in East Harlem in my neighborhood, but also a really great way to like stay up to date on the new projects that are going to exist and the new projects that are starting to come about, and kind of have some sort of influence on maybe how they shape out. Because when organizations and people trying to start projects that influence or affect or are being built in order to serve the residents of East Harlem, they really do sort of want to hear what we have to say. We as board members, but more than board members, just we as residents. And so being able to sort of have that voice in shaping a little bit, at least, how the projects are going to come to fruition, how the projects are going to happen, and how exactly they are going to affect our neighbors and our neighborhood is really rewarding. But to answer your question, I serve on the Youth and Education Committee, as well as the Environment, Open Space and Parks Committee. And both of those two are really fantastic committees to be on, in my totally a little bit biased opinion.
I hope they listen to you. That's what I want to make sure those adults. So Paradise, I know Board 12 very well. And why don't you talk a little bit about what you're learning and what you, I know that you give a lot also, and what committees you're on. Anything you want on Board 12.
Hi, my name is Paradise Phoenix. I'm on Community Board 12, which is in Manhattan Heights, and I was also born and raised here. I wanted to join my local community board because I was a part of a program at the Lower East Side Girls Club where they introduced woman from the local government to us, and I was really empowered to join my local community board. So my purpose joining was to represent youth and women of color, of course, and I was really glad to find out that when I joined my community board, there were other women of color that were and still are fighting to have their voices heard more in the community and in the board. And yeah, I'm also a part of the Youth and Education Committee, which I'm really glad about. And lately, I feel like I've done my part or have fulfilled like the part of me that wanted to represent my community, because I've noticed a lot of my peers have been advocating for things in school, like things in our local public schools, like getting iPads and Wi-Fi to students that really need it during this time. And that's a really important issue to me. And I'm glad that I have been a part of that. And as well as in school, like getting adequate ventilation so that the schools can be a safer space for students. But yeah, just to go off of what everyone else said, I joined the community board right when we went into quarantine, so I haven't had the in-person community board experience. So it's been interesting. The meetings are definitely long, but I'm glad to be a part of it. I think that young people that are wanting to be a part of the community board should consider the time that it takes. I think we're running on like adult people time, so it's hard to
Well,
work with.
congratulations, because we always hear good things about the work you're doing. So congratulations. So Leila, we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to hear from you because you're like the senior master at this. So tell us a little bit about what you got out of it, but since you've been able to stand back, why you think it's good for teens to be on the boards.
Yeah, 100%. So my community work didn't end at the community board when I left. I went off to college, as Gale and Rosie have mentioned. But I really fell in love with community work in my work at community board. As Rosie mentioned, my father was already involved, but seeing it from afar and then being active in part of your community feels very, very different, as the young women have already said and said so beautifully. Being part of decisions that are directly impacting your community and the people around you is really rewarding and fascinating work. And it was really great to be able to do that. And then I took what I learned, which is how to function in a committee, how to take notes, because I was a secretary of the Health and Human Services Committee at one point. And I learned so many valuable skills that I then took with me to university. And I ran a political organization at university called Gen Vote, which is Generation Vote, about organizing young people to vote. So I think so much of the work I did after community board was really informed by the start of my community work, which was Manhattan Community Board 3.
That's a wonderful story. So if anybody wants to just jump in, I think one of the topics that I want to know is, you're getting organizing skills like you heard. You also are getting, probably personnel skills, how to work with other people. Paradise, hopefully you'll get to meet these folks in person. It's kind of strange just to see them in a box. Jada, what do you find in terms of getting something done? I mean, there are issues that you care about. Do the adults on the board listen to some of those? Because I know you have some great ideas. How do you get your message across as a young person?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And I think that I'm not sure if it's something about the nature and something intrinsic to the nature of boards, but I think the people on the committees I serve on, and more broadly, just my community board generally, they are really open to new ideas and to new ways of thinking about old problems, which I think has been really helpful in terms of being able to get my ideas across. And I think that not only individually welcoming, but also the format of a community board generally maybe is sort of conducive to new ideas, because I think people are always, and when I say people, I mean community boards are always looking for new projects, or at least my community board is always looking for new projects and new ways that we can get involved and help the residents of our community and spread information and spread awareness and start outreach programs. And because it's a volunteer-based group, the people who are there are sitting on the board because they have some sort of inner passion, some sort of inner desire to be helpful and to make change. And so when there is a new idea, no matter who it comes from, whether it comes from a person who has been sitting on the board for a very long time or from a young person who has only been there for a few months, then I think the members have been really receptive, because it kind of just pushes along, drives further the entire mission of the community board being to serve and to improve our neighborhoods.
So Betty, I would imagine with your big meeting, they sat up and said, Betty means serious. She's, so was that helpful in getting other ideas across when they say what you accomplished?
Yeah, I think so. I got a lot of great feedback from the board about that. Those meetings, the first one specifically about remote learning, I went to the chair of the Schools and Education Committee and said, this is an idea I have for a meeting that I think might be really valuable to the community. And that was really cool to see, and just like a sort of random idea that I had turn into this actual forum that we had that proved very useful, and we got a lot of very positive feedback on. Yeah, I would agree with what Jada said. I think that a lot of the adult members of my board, and my committee specifically, I'm also on our equity working group, and a lot of them have reached out and said, do you have any ideas? Because I think that this desire for progress and this desire for new projects, as young members, we have a lot of ideas that are new and fresh, and that the older members or people that have served on the board for a longer period of time might not have thought of. And an idea is an idea. And so I think that they're happy to hear from younger voices anyway. So
Leila, I would assume that, at university, like you said, this opportunity of a community board helped. Were you able to get more stakeholders involved in the university to listen, maybe because of your organizing experience at the community board?
Definitely. I was around people who had done a lot of community organizing, and so knew how to get people's attention, knew how to get people engaged, and were able to pass on this information to me that then I was able to take to university and to other organizing things I've been doing. And it gives legitimacy. The way you take notes, the way you advertise, the way you attempt to communicate with people really has an effect on whether or not they're willing to listen.
Yep. And Paradise, are you able to get your ideas across? Do you have a tough crowd there in Board 12?
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one that thought that.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, there was one instance where this guy came in, we were having a conversation about the police and the fireworks. This is during the summer, and a guy came in and blamed Black Lives Matter organizers for the police's inactions. And I did feel a little attacked, and this was the first time I ever spoke up being on the community board, and I got to condemn, like, in front of everyone what this person said. And it was very nerve-wracking for me, because like I said, this is my first time talking and I didn't really know these people, but I got to, I guess, defend the purpose of Black Lives Matter. And I'm glad I made that statement in front of everyone. And just like Jada, like, my community board has shown to be very receptive to, they're very open-minded, and I think they were also glad that they heard my voice, because they all knew I was a younger member. So I'm glad my community board has made that space for me.
Yeah, that's a big deal. So Leila, I'm just going to ask you, because you're the senior member here. I guess what I want to say is you had a couple of years. You went off to university. I hope that maybe in the future you might want to go back to a community board. But you've been specific, but I just even want to dig a little bit deeper about, it is hard to be the only one. You were the only young person. Was that a hindrance, or was it an asset, or how do you look at it?
It was terrifying. I mean, Paradise talked about, the first time you speak in a community board is terrifying for anyone, especially when you're a 16-year-old. So knowing that no one really had high expectations for me was a little nerve-wracking. But I have to say, I think once I was able to communicate, once all of these young women communicated as well, you see the value that we all have. You see the value of our ideas, of our thoughts, and that kind of speaks for itself. So I hope that anyone who was anti 16, 17-year-olds being on the board, through listening to me, through listening to Betty, through listening to Jada, listening to all of us speak, we could change their mind.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly feel that. I love watching not only you here tonight, but on the boards, I see you speak up. And I love that the adults pay attention to you because you have a lot to say. And I'm glad, Paradise, at that instance, you made your debut, so to speak, in terms of what you had to say. And I'm sure people won't forget it. You know, when you speak, people listen. And I just want to congratulate you. So I think we're just about out of time, but I do want people to know that young people should be applying to all boards in Manhattan, and actually all 5 boroughs. Or this law is applicable to all 5 boroughs, and you should make sure that you apply. I can't, to be honest with you, the persons applying young, very likely to get on, very likely to get on. So I want to thank my guests for taking time to discuss this year's community board application process and how young members can apply and be selected and be involved. And I hope if you ever wanted to get more deeply involved in your neighborhood, which it sounds like each and every one of you were involved a little bit before, but now you really know. I know Betty talked about even knowing more about the neighborhood. And now when you walk around Ward 12 or Ward 11, oh, I know why that building's so tall. Oh, I know why there should be a health center there, right? You can begin to see things very differently. And so actually, you know, apply. So to find out more about the applications, go to manhattanbp.nyc.gov/CB apply, which obviously means community board apply, and complete your application. The deadline, as you heard earlier, is February 22nd. So as you heard, I am Gale Brewer. I am the Manhattan Borough President. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on any one of those platforms, and just write in Gale A Brewer. And if you'd like to stay up to date on what's going on in Manhattan, including the city's COVID response, and I am really tired of not being able to get appointments for seniors on the web. Well, that's a different story. So please, New York City, New York State, improve your websites. That's a different story. But please sign up for our newsletter. If you're not already on it, it's excellent. And not just from me, others are saying that. You just go to manhattanbp.nyc.gov/subscribe. This has been Represent NYC, a Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And thank you very, very much, everyone. This is a phenomenal discussion. Congratulations.